Are you ready to stop stress, anxiety, and low self-esteem from running your life? Join award-winning author Dr. Friedemann Schaub from Empowerment Radio as he addresses some of the most prevailing challenges in our day-to-day lives. Find out how you can use the power of your mind to overcome self-sabotaging patterns and build a solid foundation of confidence and self-respect. Learn cutting-edge tools and approach every day with great ease, joy, and purpose. This is the time to empower yourself. Now, here's your host, Dr. Friedemann Schaub.
Welcome back to Empowerment Radio. Isn't it hard when you lose an animal, especially a companion that you have had for years and years, and all of a sudden it's time to say goodbye? And isn't it really difficult to reconcile with all these deep emotions and the loss and that feeling of what's going on with me? Will I ever be normal again? Can I ever have room in my heart again for another animal? Sometimes the loss of an animal, is my guest, Judy Helm Wright, who is a grief coach, a pet grief coach, and many other things, but a pet grief coach. And like she said before, sometimes losing a pet can bring up more emotions and can bring up more grief than losing a human. And as we talked just before the break, this has to do with that feeling of being unconditionally loved and accepted, no matter how you feel, no matter how many days you haven't showered, no matter what's going on with you, your pet still somehow has the capacity to accept you. How many humans can really say the same about themselves? That they are able to love and accept in that unconditional way. Now, if you have any questions or any stories about your grief and pets and would like to have support or maybe share something that is helping others, call in at 800-930-2819. Again, that's 800-930-2819. Now, before the break, Judy, we talked about animals and emotions. And I want to ask you, how do you see the emotional depth of an animal? Do they really, in your experience, feel like we would say a human feels love?
Yes. The unequivocal answer is yes. And I have to tell you, one of the questions that you brought up was the emotions that animals feel. And animals grieve. Right now, we have Rosie, who is an Icelandic shepherd, and she's 13. She's getting ready to go across the Rainbow Bridge. And then we have a little white Yorkie mix called Focus. She was supposed to sit on my lap and help me focus, but she has ADD or something. Just, it's all over. But the reality is, when Rosie passes, or when we make that decision, like your father did, that to ease her suffering, and she passes, Focus will grieve very much. She will look for her. She will try to find her. She will be confused. She will be very anxious. She will have anxiety for some time. One of the things, if it's possible to have your dog die at home with you, and certainly held in your arms or surrounded by love, which is my daughter's dog just had that. And I said, isn't that amazing? Isn't that what all of us want, is to be surrounded by love as we make that passing? But Focus needs to be there. She needs to see the body. She needs to, in her mind, she will walk around the body. She will touch it. She will know that the spirit has left Rosie. And then it will be easier for her to accept that. But when we say, or when people say to me, well, dogs don't have emotions. Yeah, they do. They do. They get anxious. When we're traveling, we were just mentioning going to Sedona. When they see us bring out our little suitcases, they both run to the door. like, don't leave us. You're not leaving us. You've left us before and you're not leaving us. So that's a signal to them that, hey, they're going somewhere. Either we're going with them or we're not. And as you mentioned in your introduction, Sid would get anxious. He would get depressed when he had to go in the car. It was like, no, I don't want to. I have memories of what happens when I get in that car. And so animals do feel, they do understand a lot of the words that you say. And some people say, well, they're just getting the tone of voice when you say sit or stay.
Right.
But I think they really understand that. They understand that you're the alpha dog and you're working with them, and hopefully they know that they are loved. But they will grieve. They will.
Now, that brings up the question about, when you have to put an animal down, is it better for the companion to be present when that happened or afterwards?
Yes, it is better to have that happen when they are put down. And a lot of people will have the vet come to their home, or even in the car. They will go to be in the car, hold their pet, and the other pet they'll be able to see that pet, that their companion, in this instance, Focus will be able to tell that Rosie spirit is gone. But it will help her deal with that more. It's much just like humans. Humans need, they don't need a funeral for the person that died. That person's already on their next great adventure, but they need some closure, something they need to have some sort of a ceremony or some sort of a tribute, something that will say that chapter in my book is done.
Right.
There, I will always have those memories, always, always, always. But that particular chapter is done. I cannot make it come back. I can make the memories come back, but I can't make the pet or that person come back.
No, I mean, obviously you're a dog person. Now, I would say I'm a cat person, but it's certainly true for cats as well. Because we had some stray cats that we took care of, and one of them got ill, and we took her in, and eventually, unfortunately, we had to put her down because she had cancer. But the other cat never really saw that dead body. And for 3-4 months, this cat was looking for her buddy, looking for and crying, and it was much harder than when we had before animals that actually saw the dead body. So I completely agree, and we can relate to this too, because if we lose an animal because it runs away, it's much harder for us to reconcile, to maybe at some point give up the hope, than when we know it's done, it's complete that life. So that makes complete sense.
Yeah, I like to think of it as our book of life. Each chapter is a section of our life, and we always have that. We always have that to refer back to, and we'll always have the memories. I mean, look how many years you had Sid. How many years ago Sid was euthanized, and yet you still remember him fondly, and you remember the situation around him and around that whole thing. So yeah, you never forget him. You just remember him fondly.
Now, what do you do? Let's say there's someone who had a beautiful relationship with her dog and really feels like this was in many ways the best friend, the companion. Right. Now that dog is dying or is getting older, and that person prepares her or himself already for the. Is that really something that you recommend to already think about the grieving while the animal is still alive, to prepare oneself? Is there such a thing, or is it better to enjoy the time that we have to the fullest and then deal with the loss as it's happened?
It's thanks for asking that. There's actually a term, and it's called anticipatory grief. And we're kind of going through that with Rosie right now. Her muzzle's all gray. She's got gray throughout her fur. When she rolls over for us to scratch her belly, it's all gray. And we know that she is coming to that period when she will die. And we grieve her death, and we think, okay, how will we function after this, or how will we get by? So that is called anticipatory grief. And it's something like in humans, if you have a loved one that has a terminal disease, you're going to grieve before they die. And sometimes what happens is when they do die, you feel relief. You feel guilty for feeling relief, but it's a relief that they no longer have to suffer. They no longer have to, be in pain. And so I know you deal a lot with anxiety, and people do get anxious before their pet. And just know that it's called anticipatory grief, and it's normal.
But is there a way to do it in a more maybe productive way, in a more healthy way, in a way that actually really prepares you rather than torments you?
Well, I think that for us, once again, I like the analogy of a book. And you just remember them as they were younger, and you comfort them and your companionship to them. And know that they were sent to you for a particular reason. Their spirit united with yours and became very close. I personally believe that animals do go to heaven. And if there is a heaven, I'm waiting for all of the animals to be there. And I can't remember what psychic, George someone, said that in heaven, when children die, they're met by puppies and little kittens and little lambs, because that will they will go through the tunnel. They will go towards that, where they would not go if there were these strangers, a great grandfather. They're not going to go to them. So little children are met with small animals. I love that idea. I think it's great.
Well, now, what do you do with someone who doesn't have any spiritual inclination, doesn't believe in heaven? How can you help them in their grieving process? That's something I want to ask you after the break. And the other thing I'm wondering is, when you do feel there is a void that this loss leaves behind, and you really suffer from this void, how can you deal with it? Do you just look at it like at the Grand Canyon? Do you fill it as quickly as possible? What's the best way to deal with that void? All of those things and more when we come back.